Welcome back to Grow Your Impact, Income, and Influence from the Stage. If you are somebody out there who is thinking about getting married, wants to be in a relationship, or maybe you're in a relationship that you have some second thoughts about, my guest today has written a book called Bad Marriage Advice, which I absolutely love. It comes out in August. She has also been a trained relationship coach and therapist. She's helped hundreds of couples, and she has her own podcast called The Secrets of Happily Ever After. She is going to be here today to show us how we can fix our relationships in a very short period of time. If that sounds like something you're like, I don't believe that, it took me 20 years to get here, you're going to want to tune in and listen. Monica, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm so good, Steve. So happy to be here with you.
Thanks for joining me. Monica and I met actually at a live event that she snuck into.
Wait, what?
You didn't sneak in. We did meet at a live event, and I was really shocked to hear your story. So I'm going to ask you, where did all of this start for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far back you want me to go. My parents divorced when I was 12, and I was like, that's not happily ever after. What? And so I just got really obsessed with like what makes marriages or long-term relationships lasting and happy because I kind of took a look around and noticed most people weren't that happy, and I was not interested in that. So I went through college and then I met my Prince Charming. We got married. We started our family. And it wasn't as easy as I thought because I had studied marriage and relationships, sociology, all the things. And so felt like I was pretty equipped to like make this work. And then the challenges started rolling in, and I thought, well, maybe I don't know anything. And so, I basically over a decade of time studied marriage and relationships. And when my fourth baby went to school for full time, I went back to school to get my master's in marriage and family counseling. And what happened was I got a year into that program and I was like, I don't think I actually want to be a therapist. The success rate for couples therapy is actually very low. And so I was pretty discouraged because I wanted to really help married couples. And I knew there had to be a way, but I didn't know what it was. So I dropped out of my master's program and I got pretty depressed. Like I was like, gosh, I know I like feel this calling and this mission is so strong on my heart. I just don't know what to do. And I had a neighbor and a really good friend at the time, and you guys will probably recognize this name, but he's just a good friend, and he showed up at my house one day, I'm sure by his wife's prompting, and he was like, "I hear you have a mission." And I was like, "Yeah." And I told him all about how I wanted to help couples live happily ever after, but I had no idea what to do. And he sat on my couch and he said, "You should start a podcast." And I remember thinking, no, that sounds so technical. I have no idea. What would I even say? What would I talk about? And why would anyone listen to me? So here was like the root of my depression because I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know why anyone would ever listen to me because I dropped out of school. I didn't have any letters behind my name. Like, what credentials did I have for somebody to listen to me as an expert? And he's like, "Well, have you ever heard the name Tony Robbins?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "He doesn't have any credentials behind his name. A lot of people listen to him." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I got a C in marketing, but I teach marketers how to market." And I was like, "You do?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he went and got this book for me. And I'm kind of a book nerd. It looks like you're kind of a book nerd too, Steve, huh?
I do like books.
I
I do.
really like books. And so when somebody says they've written a book, I'm like, instantly they go up, right? And he's like, "I don't have any letters behind my name." And he pulls out this book called Expert Secrets and hands it to me. And it's like got his name on and just a little backstory you have to understand. So I have known Russell Brunson at the time, I'd known him for about 3 years and I was really good friends with his wife. We talked all the time, but Russell never spoke. Like we would go to parties and like social events together, and he is like in the corner with his baby. She's old now, but with like his baby on his hip, shielding him from having to talk to anyone. Like the man was a wallflower. So to see that he had written a book, I was like, wow. So I was like, okay, well, I'll bite, So the next day, he sent me all of this information about how to start a podcast, what I needed, what I should do. And I remember like having all of these hesitations, and he's like, just start talking. You'll find your voice. Don't worry because nobody's listening anyways. Just you'll figure it out, but just get started. And so I did. And that was 7 years ago. I've had my podcast for 7 years. It's had lots of iterations, changed names a couple of times. But I started talking and I found my voice. I found my passion. I went and got training in a modality that works really, really well called relational life therapy, where I help couples on the brink of divorce that nobody else has been able to help. And I have found it so rewarding. And so it was like so cool that from that conversation of me literally like, I know what my mission is, but I have no idea how to accomplish it. And then listening to a friend, like, here we are.
So, okay, there's a couple things in there I want to unpack. First of all, if you guys have been living under a rock and you don't know who Russell is, founder of ClickFunnels, probably, I don't know, net worth is somewhere between like it's millions, like 300, 400 million. Like the guy has his finger in all kinds of businesses, super smart, super humble. And it's
He's an
interesting
amazing guy.
because if you see him on stage, you're like, there's no way that guy is an introvert. And we were on a boat with him as part of Inner Circle. We did like a boat cruise with him, and there were like 20 of us on the boat, and like Russell did the same thing. He just kind of like, you knew he knew he wanted to, like he was expected to talk, but he is so introverted in like a painful way.
He's getting so much better. It's so funny. We are just recently talking about this, like the difference between Russell Brunson and like Russell.
Yeah.
We went out together as couples just last weekend, and we were totally talking about this. And he has gotten so much better. Like he can carry on a conversation now. He's like totally fun to talk to, but he's come a long way. But he created Russell Brunson, the stage. It's not that it's not him. It's just he worked very hard to create that. I mean,
Absolutely.
he comes on stage and he comes alive. He's got so much energy and passion, and he speaks really fast, and he knows what he's talking about, and he loves doing it. But if you see like those first videos he posted, you can see how much work and effort went into creating that version of Russell Brunson. And then when you meet him in person, you're like, wait, what?
Right. Well, I mean, because the show is about events and growing through events, I just want to point out Russell did craft that character and he practiced and practiced and practiced. It's just like any other skill. All right, I want to come back to you're in school to help people like figure out their relationships. You had struggled a little bit with yours. I'm going to come back to that. But the first thing is you're in school and you realize there's a really low success rate. Why is there a low success rate? And what was the difference between what you learned, RLT, and what they teach in college?
Good listening. Yeah, so it's really interesting because the reason for the low success rate in traditional marriage therapy is several things. But one is because most couples, research shows that they'll be 6 years in a bad marriage before they'll ever seek out help. And to me at the time, I felt like that was the reason. It's because they were so like primed for divorce that by the time they went and got help, that they were like beyond help. That one of them was just out. And so it was kind of like they were just kind of checking the box of therapy before they separated. So to me, I thought that was the reason why it had such a low success rate. But I do remember sitting in my classes, and there were so many things like you stay neutral, you don't take sides, you don't self-disclose. There were so many things that went against like what I felt like would actually help people. And so it wasn't until 5 or 6 years later when I discovered RLT, and Terry Real is the founder of RLT. And there's so many things about it that flies in the face of traditional therapy. Now he was trained as a family systems therapist. And but there were so many things that he changed about, like, for example, RLT practitioners, we take sides. We do trauma therapy in the presence of the partner. We judiciously self-disclose. So we show up not as the expert, not as like I'm the one who's going to fix this, but we show up as a fellow traveler. Like I've learned in my marriage lots of things that, I'm happy to share with you as a fellow traveler to maybe that hopefully will be helpful, right? And so there's just lots of things about that modality that make way, way higher percentage of helping couples.
Well, that's okay. So from an observer, I would say like if I went to a relationship therapist, I'll actually share this. We went, the girl that I dated 3 or 4 years ago, we went to four different therapists.
Oh, wow.
That should probably tell you right away there was something there. But the thing that I'm open, I will play full out. If I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try to pull
Yeah.
down walls. But it is very hard to sit in a therapist's office and feel judged.
Mm,
And
yeah.
regardless, if the therapist is a non-objective observer, you feel judged.
Hmm.
I know that they say my sister is a therapist. She would say, "Oh, we don't try to make people feel judged. We do everything we can not to." You still do unless you admit the thing that puts you on the same playing field as me and actually opens me up to taking advice is, "Oh, you had that problem."
Yeah.
And you're willing to just be honest and vulnerable and say, hey, we struggled with XYZ, whatever XYZ is, suddenly I feel like, oh, this person's been there and they figured it out.
Hmm. Yes.
So I
I'm the
think,
same way.
I think that right there opens up the world of therapy a lot. And I think a lot, you also said like usually it's two people in a relationship together, but one is checked out. The other person is like, hey, let's go to therapy. They finally get there. And then you're looking at 3, 4, 5 years of therapy to get any kind of outcome. If you tuned into this podcast to figure out how to fix your relationship in a very short period of time, we're gonna get there. But I want to go, Monica, how like what did you see when you started working with people using this therapy versus what you saw before?
Well, like I said, we do take sides in RLT. It's not like if there is a partner who needs help, it's silly to think that everything in a relationship is 50-50. That simply isn't true. So there, in any conflict or problem in a relationship, it can be 99-1, and so we'll rally behind the partner that needs help. But also, there's this concept called being, and Terry Real, whenever he shows up on podcasts and things like that, he always does a really good job of giving credit. And I'm not as good at that. So I'm always going to give credit to Terry, but he took this from somewhere. But it's a concept called being appropriately discrepant. And so the problem with a lot of traditional therapy is, you know, if you're too holding, then nothing is ever going to change. So if, a couple comes in and you're just holding space for them to air their grievances and all the different things, then there's no movement, there's no change. But if you're too discrepant, meaning you're too far from where they are, then
Mhm.
they're just going to fire you because, so there's this concept of being appropriately discrepant. And so we call it carefrontation. We will confront you with what we see is happening in the relationship, but we do so with love, holding both partners, um, equally honoring them as a person, but showing them their behavior. And so that is what sets RLT so far apart, is because I'm going to confront you on your bad behavior. I'm going to let you know that you're still a great person. There's nothing wrong with you as a human. but the way you're behaving is not going to get you what you want in this relationship. And so you have to be able to be appropriately discrepant to be able to help a couple. And that is what's missing from most therapies.
Okay, I love this because I think you're right. If the therapist just sits in a chair and says, "Well, how does that make you feel?" Or "What do you think about that?" It's like, I don't know, like help me figure it out. That's why I'm here. And I think there is a point, especially in relationship therapy. This isn't personal development. It's not you sitting there looking in a mirror. It's you dealing with another person. And having help with that is important. So I want to step back to when you got married. You said, I'm a couple years in and I really wanted this to be happily ever after. I studied it before I got married. What were some of the struggles that you had out of the gate that made you realize like, hey, marriage isn't isn't easy, right?
Yeah. Well, we started having kids right away, and we also started our business right away together. And so we were both working together in this business, and I was trying to have babies and, create a home life. And we come from very different backgrounds, my husband and I. So, you hear the opposites attract and like all those different sayings or whatever, but it's true. Like, we marry our unfinished business. And so what I saw in my husband was enough like the types of things that I grew up with that I was comfortable. But in my mind, I thought if I am perfect, that like I had a lot of abandonment issues, a lot of like feeling like I had to be in control of things. And so I was like, if I show up perfectly, like with these kids and with my husband and in this business or whatever, then I can earn enough love. And that is the work that I had to do personally and in my relationship because and what's great about my husband is he didn't have that problem at all. Like he grew up in an environment where there's enough love to go around. He never questioned whether people liked him or loved him or anything. He knew he deserved love. Whereas I felt like I had to earn it. And with, you know, two, three kids, a developing but growing business and a household, I wasn't doing anything perfect. Like I was like, nothing is perfect. I have no control over anything. Like there's nothing like a bunch of kids to show you that you have no control over anything. And so, I mean, I just had to learn that lesson, and it was very difficult and very like hard one. I mean, basically, I had massive postpartum depression and anxiety. I had to go home and live with my mom for a little while, who's also a therapist. My mom, my dad are both therapists. I'm very like learned in the therapeutic world. Um, but I needed my mom basically to work with me on all of my biggest fears and all of my childhood woundings and all of that so that I could not blow up my life in essentially.
Okay, so one, thanks for being vulnerable and being honest. Two, when you started to see these things, now looking at people that are in relationships, because I mean, you've grown through this, your marriage is super strong from everything I know of it.
Yeah. But the
Because,
reality is when we're not using the skills, our marriage is just as messy as everybody else's, right? We've done a lot of work, we've learned a lot of skills. We know how to recognize when we're in our adoptive child and we're like kind of going off the rails. So it's necessary to do the work. But yes, our marriage can be as messy as everybody else's marriage on a bad day.
well, that where I wanted to go was what do you see now looking at both your relationship and the people that you work with? What do
Yeah.
you see as like as the causes and how do you help people get on the other side of it? And then we'll get to the events that you're holding because I think that's the magic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, what's really cool is we're all a product of our upbringing, right? I mean, what happens is we grow up in the family that we grew up in, even if you feel like it was a relatively healthy childhood, which some people do, a lot of people don't. My childhood was not healthy. What you do is you create these adaptations. So once you get to a certain age, like I would say around between 5 and 7, you start to create these adaptations to protect yourself from the environment that you're growing up in. So if you have a over controlling mother and a very passive aggressive father, you're going to caretake their emotions. You're going to learn that you have to be wantless and needless to be loved. Or there's all different variations of this, but you create this what we call this adaptive inner child. And what happens is adaptive then, so it's in its infinite wisdom, this child that kept you alive, got all of your needs met growing up. But then you show up in your relationship, and not only do you have your adoptive child, but your spouse has their adoptive child, and you get triggered in a relationship. There's conflict. And now your wise adults completely offline, and your adaptive children are fighting each other with their adaptations. You're employing these losing strategies that were great when you were growing up, but are not useful in your relationship now. So like something happens and you'll be triggered, and you're not facing your beautiful wife anymore. You're facing your overly controlling mother. So you're reacting to not what's in front of you, but what's in your past. And so, what relational life therapy coaching practitioners will do is sit down with you and help you understand and reparent that inner child inside of you. So you can start to recognize when you are triggered, and you can say, oh, this is my adaptive child talking right now. And you may need to put guidance and guidelines and reparent that child and let them know, like, hey, I will deal with my spouse. I'm here with you. I'll never leave you. You can stand behind me and I will protect you, and I will deal with my spouse. So that's kind of like the roots of, there's three parts to, and I'm sure we'll talk about this as you ask me about the events, but there's three parts. There's the gathering data. So you find out about a couple and their dynamic and what their losing strategies are and where they go, in a conflict. Then you do trauma work with them in the presence of their partner so they can see where their adaptations came from.
Mhm.
And then you teach skills. So you need all three pieces of that to really be able to have a healthy, thriving adult relationship.
Can you give a personal example or maybe change the name of a client and give an example? Because I think it's great to talk about, and I see it. It's getting to know people, then it's getting to know where they go under conflict, and then it's giving them skills to go to a different place. But that sounds very esoteric and kind of out there, right? It's in the ether. How do we make this concrete for people listening? Can we give an example?
Totally. So my adoptive child is a fixer. I have a huge fear of abandonment. I immediately go to it's my fault. And everybody that I love is going to leave me. So I have to make everything perfect. I have to like fix the situation and make it perfect. And my husband so there's like a relationship grid. I go one down and boundaryless. I'm like, whatever it takes, love me, love me, love me. I will do anything you need to just love me, right? That's where I go on this grid. My husband goes one up and boundaried. So for him, he's like, way too much emotion is happening here. Like, I can't handle the emotion. Like, I'm going to go up and walled off. Like, so what would happen is we would get in an argument, like the very first disagreement, no, I wouldn't say the very first, but first big argument we had at college, right? I was like really upset because I'd been at work all day, and then I made some dinner, and he was studying till late at night. This was back before everybody had a cell phone in their pocket, right? So I'm like, I didn't know when he was going to be home. It was late. I was frustrated. I didn't know where he had been. And so he felt like I was totally interrogating him and probably accusing him of things that, whatever. So my adoptive child showed up in, you know, some form of, you should call if you're going to be late. I need to know where you're at all the time. Like, you need to communicate better with me. Like, here I am, your wife, and sitting here wondering where you are. And he's showing up in some form of, what are you accusing me of? Like he's like going to battle, and I'm crying, and he's like, I'm out of here. And immediately he leaves, and immediately I'm like, oh God, I screwed up. Like, he's never coming back. Like, I lost his love. Like, he's out. I'm going to be abandoned now. Right. So that's like our adaptive children reacting to each other when really, if we could have both settled down a little bit, we could have had a really conversation, created a solution about here's what happens, this is how it makes me feel, here's how you could change behavior somehow. Just a little thing like I think I had a pager at the time or something. You could like page me and, with a code saying that you're studying or something, like whatever. Like we could figure it out in a way that was logical for both of us, but with our inner children both in the mix, that wasn't going to happen.
Well, I think your inner children, anytime inner children is going to be triggered, right? They're going to come
Yeah.
out and like it takes our logical brain offline and we just
Exactly.
like stuck in emotion. So what I know you said you had a pager, but let's talk about like what would be the skill now if somebody is listening to this and they're like, "Oh, that totally happens because I wake up 2 hours later and I'm like, did I really say that? Did I really do these things? Why does it feel this way?" What's a skill that can help people maybe even just put some space there?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, this is like one of the most important relationship skills that I think that people do wrong. Like and it's repair. Like most couples who come in and are really in distress, they're missing a mechanism of repair. And so what most people get wrong about repair is they think, okay, I bring up a grievance and then I respond to it and talk about my grievances as well. And then we're off to the races. And like, boom, like that used to happen between my husband and me all the time. I would say, Love, my feelings were really hurt when you said this thing to the kids, or whatever. And he would say, well, my feelings were really hurt when you did this thing. Like, and so I would go into my losing strategies. He would go into his losing strategies and nothing was repaired. It was like, who can who was hurt worse, right? And that's what happens with most couples. And that's why a lot of times people don't even bring things up because they're like, this isn't going to go well. Like, we're
Yeah.
both going to go into our adaptive children and it's going to just be ugly. So I'll just stuff it down or, pretend like it didn't happen or ignore or whatever, right? Here's the thing about repair. It is a one-way street. If one partner approaches the other partner about repair, that partner is at the customer service window. So think about customer service. I think a lot of your people can relate to this. If I come to the customer service window and say that my microwave is broken, I don't want to hear about your broken toaster. I want you to fix my microwave, right? But that's what happens so often. So the first thing is we have to learn that if I approach you with an repair request, you are at the customer service window. Your only job is to repair my grievance. That doesn't mean we can't deal with the toaster, but it's not your turn. We can deal with the toaster the next time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, what comes to mind thinking about that, the skills that we were taught across four therapists, they all taught the same skill. But it was listen, like maybe frame it first. Hey, there's something I need to talk to you about.
Yeah.
It might be a little triggering, but like, can we sit down and talk?
Yeah.
Then share the thing and then have the person repeat it back
Mhm.
to you,
Mhm.
right? Which I think is honestly
Yeah, this is not a bad skill.
great communication because it's you might tell me something and if I can't repeat it back
I
to
get
you
it wrong.
correctly, I'm
Hmm.
hearing something different.
Sure. Yeah.
Repeat it back and then make sure you're on the same page and then you can start the repair process. But usually what happens is I didn't say that. Yes, you did. No, you didn't.
Oh,
Argue,
you get
argue,
into an
argue.
objectivity battle. Yeah, that's
Oh
even
my goodness.
worse.
The anyway, I won't go any further down our lane. So what you're saying is I think 100% true and it is Bart Miller, one of both of our
Our
friends,
friends.
the
Uh-huh.
things that one of the things that Bart always said to me, which I liked about relationships, was start by remembering, hey, we're on the same team.
Uh-huh.
We're here because we want the same outcome. I don't want to have an enemy. And that kind of sets the stage to be able to not have to say, hey, I have a toaster that needs fixed. Like, let me
That's
fix
really
your microwave.
interesting, right? So I call that remembering love. And there's two parts to remembering love. Remembering that the person you're talking to is someone you love and you live with. And the second thing is that the reason you're talking is to make things better.
Yeah. That's and it I think going back to what you said about like sometimes we get in our head and we're like, I don't want to have that conversation because I know it's not going to go well. If you do that once, probably not a big deal. But if you do that 10 times, you're going to start building up resentment in your subconscious. And then you're not going to talk to them about great things, which is really what you want. You want a partner in life that, like, hey, we're sharing this amazing family together, we're sharing these trips together. But how many people have you seen go on vacation and they pick up their phones, they don't talk to each other, they're not having sex, they're just like, oh, we're at this amazing place. We're in Maui. We're not doing anything.
Mhm.
Or, we're in Mexico there were people on the Mexico retreat that we all went on that like not having a good time. We're married. And it's just like, what's really going on? But they don't want to deal with it because instead of just one or 10, they've got 100 things sitting between them on the couch,
Yep.
which actually leads to our next piece. Like one of the things that a lot of people will say, I'm not going to go to therapy because it's going to take 3 years or 5 years. There's going to be 2 weeks between us talking. And what happens when somebody comes in 2 weeks apart? They spend the first 30 minutes doing the same
Yeah.
stuff. How
Mhm.
do we fix that? Because you're pioneering something that gets to the heart of actually making a difference. How do we fix that?
Yeah. So my mentor, Terry Real, the creator of relational life therapy, was like what he discovered, which was really cool. And the way he helped couples on the brink of divorce that nobody else has been able to help. And what he would do is people would call him and he would say, okay, he would qualify them. And then they would come to where he was in Boston and spend 3 days with him. And the end of the 3 days, the promise was either you've got some really good things to work on and you're going to go on and continue with a little bit of support, but you have a really good start, you're going to stay together, or you'll know that it's time to get divorced and we'll help you do that, right? So by the end of this 3 days, you've looked enough into and you've gone deep enough into this process, that three-part process that I told you about, that you're either well on your way to getting better or you know that it's time to call it quits.
I mean, that's a pretty big promise, right? That we're going to sit down for 3 days. What kind of therapy do you think you're going to get done in 3 days? That, like, just show me the juxtaposition between 3 days in an intensive versus, you know, 3 years meeting every week or every other week.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I've watched Terry do this. Like part of my training with the RLT program was to be able to watch these intensives. You get to watch him work with couples, and I have seen the most amazing things come out of these 3 day intensives. I mean, you have couples who are not even communicating, like you said, they're going on vacation, they're not even talking to each other. Like all of a sudden, they're super lovey-dovey, holding hands, walking on the beach, right? Like it's honestly, it is so tremendously powerful to sit there with a couple to find out the things that are sitting between them in the couch. And it's not even necessary to know all of the things that are sitting between them on the couch. Like you don't even have to go through, like that's 5 years of therapy. You don't need that. What you need to find out is how did those things get there? And so that's the work that you do in a 3 day intensive. You get to know the couple, you get to know their dynamic, you get to know their losing strategies, and then you dig deep into their, yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say it, you dig deep into their past. Like most people are a little scared of therapy because like, I don't want to go into the past. It's not like you have to talk about all of the things, but you do have to find out how was that formed. Like, for example, if you have let's just say a man who's abusing or lying to his wife. That is an adaptation to something. Like that is in reaction to something he learned growing up. And you just have to get to the root of that. Like who controlled you growing up that you felt like you have to now be controlling or lie and manipulate, right? And as soon as you show that, I have seen partner after partner after partner just completely abandon all dysfunctional qualities and change the trajectory of their family forever. It was like, who treated you that way? And and is that what you want to hand down to your children? And most people are like, no, I don't want my children to hate me the way I hate my father or whatever it is, right? And so as soon as you point that out to them, they'll change just like that. But it's being able to have the time and the space and the container to be able to show people how those adaptations were formed and then give them the skills to do something different.
And I think, I mean, the thing that strikes me is in an intensive like that, like in 1 hour every other week, you're gonna get a little bit. But in a 3 day, like we're gonna sit down, we're gonna go deep on this stuff, and we're gonna like pound it into your subconscious and into your actions till you get it. Like, is that what causes the main difference? What do you think is the main thing that they're going to get out of 3 days? Are they going to be overwhelmed? I can see some people just shutting down.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my favorite quotes of Terry Reals is generational trauma rips through uh, families like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one person has the courage to stand and face the flames. That person heals their ancestors and leaves something better for their children. And so that is the great promise of doing this work. It's like you can be what I like to call the transitional character in your family. You can take like, and I used Terry Real as an example a lot because he's very open about these things. But he says the greatest accomplishment of his life, and I'll tell you mine after I tell you his, is that he says my father was an alcoholic, angry abuser, and his father was an alcoholic, angry abuser. My boys will never say that about me, and their children will never say that about him. So he stood in the middle of that dysfunctional dynamic. He turned and he changed it for all future generations. Now, for me, I come from a long line of divorced, independent, like massively controlling women, right? And my children will not say that. That is not the experience that I'm giving them. And hopefully, it's not the experience that they're going to give their children, right? I am taking the dysfunctional pattern that I saw in my family through generations and I'm
Hmm.
changing it. And that takes so much courage. But there's nothing more important that we can do in this life.
That I would agree. I think that that is because you can change. We have the tools,
Hmm.
right? It's
Yeah.
about doing the work. And speaking of doing the work, I have two questions. The first one is if somebody's listening to this and they're like, "Well, I'm totally in, but my spouse is totally out." Can one person really make a difference in the relationship?
Okay. I love this question and it's so layered. And I literally just recorded a podcast episode about it. So I would say I would refer you to my latest podcast episode on Secrets of Happily Ever After. But
We will, just so you know, we'll link that down below so
yes.
people can find it. But give us like a 30-second.
Yeah, 30 seconds is you can have one partner who is unwilling to change, but the other partner, no matter what, is enabling that partner. So let me just give you the picture of most of the time in that scenario, you have a grandiose partner who isn't willing to change because they're not uncomfortable. So I like to compare this to, some dude smoking a cigarette in an elevator. He's having a great time smoking a cigarette. What's the problem? Everyone else in the elevator is choking out, right? He's not uncomfortable. So why should he change his behavior? So if you are experiencing that from your partner, then you're enabling that behavior unless you make them uncomfortable. Now, you could just decide to walk out. That would probably make them uncomfortable. But if you want them to see a counselor or something like that, there's a progression. I would show up every day and I would say, hey, I made us an appointment for Friday at 3 to see this RLT counselor. I'd like you to join me. If they say no, I would say, I want to work on our relationship. If you're not willing to join me in that process, I will no longer be sleeping in the same bed as you. I will no longer be going to social occasions with you. I'll no longer be cooking dinner for you, right? You have to make them uncomfortable for them to have any motivation to change. Some people give me a lot of pushback on that, but it's the reality.
Okay, so I like that. I think that that's good. I think the other piece that I mean, this is what we used when we went, and it was, hey, I care about you and I want to figure this out. I don't know if it's going to work, but
Mhm.
it's either going to make things better or it's going to make things worse. It's going to be different than where we are right now.
Yes.
And I think that, I mean, I'm here to do the work in all areas of my life. With her, it was a little different. So, okay, that's the first question. And the second question is it really realistic to see results in 3 days? Because I think a lot of people would say, like, well, it took us 10, 15, 20 years to hit here. Are we really going to see a difference? And you said yes. You said that you saw this like through
I've
Terry's
seen
case
it
studies that you watched. You've
over and
seen it
over and
with
over.
people that you've worked with. Like, tell us a little bit about like what allows a person to change that much in 3 days.
It's pointing out to them what they cannot see. And, as the relational life practitioner, it's using leverage. I mean, really, it's like what they have to lose or what they have to gain by changing. And people will, I have seen it time and time and time again, change for the better quickly because they either want something on the other side of that or they're about to lose something on the other side of that. And so if you can point that out to them and that you can show them that here's what you have to lose or here's what you have to gain, they will play the game.
I would agree. You have to put something at stake, right? It's like anything though. And I think if I was in a relationship where I wanted somebody to do that, having the conversation of, hey, we're here. We obviously care about each other. We did the work to get here. Are we willing to do the little bit of work that it takes to get better? And yeah, it might hurt for a little bit, but it will also make the rest of our lives better. The payoff is much bigger. Um, you guys, if you're interested in learning more about Monica, we are linking her website in the show notes. I do want to shift a little bit, and I just want to talk about what is the worst marriage advice you've ever received? Because you wrote a whole book about it.
I don't think I could pick just one, Steve. I don't think I could pick just one. The book has 15 in them in it.
Oh,
But I would say, just to give you a little teaser, I would say probably the one I hear the most when I polled my audience and said, what's the worst marriage advice you ever heard? It is happy wife, happy life. It's that cliche. Like, how are you going to build a relationship where only one person is happy, right? That's a recipe for disaster. And then I will say, my personal, the one I like to talk about the most that I hear a lot is learn how to compromise. I think that is the
oh,
worst advice. We
can
don't,
we? I want to talk
compromise is
about this
not
one.
the goal.
This one's great because one of the counselor number two that we went to was talking about compromising, and I said it's not compromising because compromising means that we both get what we want,
No,
and
compromising is means
like,
you neither of you get what you
well,
want. You give a
right,
little, she gives a little, you meet in the middle,
correct.
and neither of you actually got what you
Neither of
want.
us are happy, right?
Mhm.
Like there's no such thing as compromise. And if I say that I'm happy to give something up and I am not, then my subconscious and like then I'm going to become a little bit passive aggressive. Like it's going to dig at me, right? I said it would be better to say, I want you to be happy, so I will do X thing for you. But I'm not going to say that I love it. I'm not going to like put on a false face about it, but I'll do it because I care about you. That's a much better real answer than compromise. So we had there was another C word that we came up with for it. Oh,
Collaborate. I teach couples how to collaborate.
she was talking about collaborate too, and I don't always believe in collaboration because collaboration means like that I want to do it. And
I'd love to dig into that, but I think
sure,
we're kind of out of time. But
we are. I mean, collaboration can exist, but sometimes the argument that we were having, I'll just give it a little bit of context and then I want to hear more about the book. The argument that we were having was she wanted me to go to something, an event that I did not like. And I said, I'm happy to go and support you because I care about you. But you can't tell me that I have to like it.
Uh-huh.
Like it would be like
Right.
if you told if your husband told you you have to like green peppers or you have to like smoking, whatever, right? Like pick X thing. You know what? I can put up with it because I like it, but or because I like you, but not because I like it. Um, that's that's where I think compromise can be an interesting one. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm actually late for my next appointment, so
We can wrap it up. The book and Monica's website will be listed down below. Feel free to check her out. Monica, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing. It's been a great conversation as always.
thank you so much for having me, Steve. I definitely want to get into this conversation with you when we're talking about compromise and collaboration. I think it's so important. But the reality, the difference, collaboration means I understand the things that are important to you and why, and you also understand my reservations. And that goes both ways. So when you're willing to communicate really well about an issue, and both partners understand where each other is coming from, how their position was formed, and what their reservations are about each other's positions, then you can come up with something even better than either you could have come up with on your own.
I like that definition and I like the way that it solves problems. I think that is great. Monica, thanks again for coming on. Guys, we will see you next time here on Grow Your Impact, Income, and Influence from the Stage. Have an awesome day.